What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Biblical Hitman. It's your host, Stephen. I'm here today with Trevor Lohman. He is an author, a researcher, a scientist, and a professor. Folks, every time I have this gentleman on the show, it's always great. It's always so much information that you just have to come back and revisit it again, and that doesn't hurt at all. But folks, if it's your first time, you want to support the show, it's free. Why don't you head on over to YouTube, smash that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends, drop a comment down below about the things that we get into, because that is where I engage with the audience the most. And guess what? Head on over to the audio section as well, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, and Spotify. While you're over there, drop a follow, a 5-star review, and hit that notification bell to be, just be notified whenever we drop episodes. We drop episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, unless something does come up. You know, we are living this thing life. But Trevor, brother, it's always good to have you on. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, when you text me that you might need a backup, I was happy. I'd love to be your cancellation guy anytime.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love how we've established this relationship, man. You know, you've influenced me over the course of our short friendship, which is amazing stuff, because, you know, that's what real friends do. You know, they kind of sharpen each other like iron. And, you write a lot. You have a book out there. It's called God's Eye View, folks. Check it out. I actually have it right here. I'll show it to the camera. All right.
Oh, thank you, man.
It's a pretty good piece right there. A lot of interesting information. You kind of merge a little bit of the science field with religion. And, you make a good fight for, Christ. You make a good fight for the spiritual realm that we do live in. And so for the folks that are new to you, new to your name, your book, everything, if you could just give us a short, brief introduction of yourself and where they could find this book.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I grew up, I think like probably most of your listeners, in this sort of sci-fi future. You know, we were going to be traveling around in spaceships and cancer would be cured and everything would be great. Star Trek world. And so I was always super into science, was an atheist most of my life. And over the past few years, that's changed, definitely. And so the book, really, God's Eye View, was an attempt to, I don't think you have to abandon rationality to believe in God, to be a Christian. I think you can make the case, with scientific observations. And I know a lot of people do this. Like it's not like I'm the first person to do this. Michael Behe, there's the guy, he's always on shows. Oh, I can't remember his name. Stephen Meyer does a great job.
Oh, by the way, I reached out to him, tried to get him on the show. Yeah, and actually his publicist got back to me, and she said to reach back out the first of next year. So that's something I'm going to plan on doing, because I'd love to get him on too, because he gets into a lot of the creation stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh, all their stuff is so good. I love it, but I didn't really want to get to like that level of minutia. I kind of wanted to say this is something that the atheists did in the early 2000s. They loved using religious arguments against religious people. They loved using like, oh, but this verse says this, so how can you think that? It's just like they get all excited about that kind of.
Yeah, they seem to straw man a lot of things.
Yes, and I realized, well, you can kind of do the same kind of argumentation back at them, and it's not like everyone who's scientifically minded is an atheist, but that is, kind of the trend,
right?
Although that's changing. So that's what the book is. I mean, when you read the scientific conclusions of the 20th century, they sound very religious, and most of those thinkers were religious. Most of them are Christian, so it shouldn't be a surprise. And yet, we live in this hyper rational world where that's silly, and so I just kind of tried to make that obvious contradiction apparent in the book. And you can find it on Amazon, Audible, all the usual places.
Right on, man. Yeah, I get everything in the physical copy just in case, there's a Fahrenheit 451 situation. I'm already working for the fire department, so I'm already on the inside.
Oh, you're one of the,
you know what I'm saying? I'm one of the guys
flip that switch.
That's it. I'll play game. But I'm gonna be like that book drug dealer and that time.
Oh yeah,
be like, hey, man, I got
the trench coat in the alley.
The Bible, the Bible's the best one. Come get you.
That would be the hardest one to get for sure.
That
was such a. I don't know when that book was written, but all those books that I read when I was maybe, I don't know, later in life. I think maybe Fahrenheit 451 you had to read in high school, but like 1984, Animal Farm, Brave New World by Huxley, It Can't Happen Here, Francis Sinclair. I read all those books in my 20s, and I feel like that might have been like the gateway drug to Christianity, because it does kind of make you start thinking about all of these institutions. You're like, I don't know if I really trust human institutions, you know?
Right,
Um,
right.
and so, yeah, Fahrenheit 451 was definitely one of those. But
Yeah. It's
anyway,
an intense movie, and just with artificial intelligence, which we kind of got into the last episode,
yes,
right? Episode 62, everybody go back, watch it. It's the first episode we did with Trevor. We got into artificial intelligence, the idea of consciousness, the agency of consciousness.
everybody hates my take on AI. So if you're like an AI supremacist, don't listen to that episode. I although my I feel like I constantly have to re-explain my position. I think AI is cool. It does cool stuff. It just isn't it isn't endowed with a soul. And I think to kind of pretend that it is, you're doing the marketing on behalf of OpenAI. And there's no
Sure, I
reason to
agree.
talk about how it is this conscious being. Now, it could be used for horrible purposes. It could be the demise of humanity, and maybe it will someday be conscious. I'm doubtful. I think you kind of demean what it means to have a soul if you say that AI could have a soul. And I don't think it's any coincidence that that's going on in society right now. In a world where half the country doesn't think humans have souls,
Right,
that
right.
AI is all anybody wants to talk
No,
about.
I follow you. I follow you. And what's so fascinating too, because you bring in that idea, right? And I respect and I agree with it at some point. But when I've investigated the occult and what the occult
Yeah,
believes
yeah,
in, and the fact that there's this alien agenda and stuff, a lot of these things are kind of corralled together into this big shotgun blast of just
yeah.
multiple things happening. But I think that this is what it has to do with artificial intelligence maybe having this idea of consciousness. It doesn't have it right now because it's all programmed and it's all algorithms and all this kind of stuff. But what I think is what the occult is trying to do is merge it inside of a body. And this gets into
Mhm.
something that you brought up to me, man. We were texting the other day. You brought up, hey, that topic, life in the blood, because the Bible talks about it.
Yep, yep,
You
yep.
told me to go research a PubMed article about young blood.
Oh boy.
So I do think the body and blood have something to do with this. And when we read Revelation 13, it says, that the false prophet pretty much gives life unto the image of the beast, and it's able to speak and to do miracles. And everyone in the world worships this thing as a god. So I'm like, man, is that the idea of artificial intelligence merging with some sort of homunculus body, aka like a Frankenstein creation? And now it's got what it's been craving for, or maybe not it's been craving for, but what the occult's been craving for to bring their God in this whole time. I don't know, but
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
it's all
Well,
speculation, man.
first of all, first of all, that Youngblood comment, that was a back channel text message. So I got to be more careful with what I text you now. Now that I know it's gonna come back to bite me, because this is like
Oh, goodness.
this is the fringest of fringest scientific topics. And I actually, after I texted that to you, I went on PubMed and searched it, and I couldn't find the article. I mean, I'm sure I could with time, but there was this whole. I used to kind of be into longevity research a while back, not in like the biohacker kind of way, just like I was genuinely curious, because this is part of that transhumanistic movement. Like, can you? Oh, sorry. Can you make humans live forever, or twice as long, or three times as long? And the scientific consensus is absolutely yes, you can, and it's right around the corner. And it's sort of been right around the corner for a while, and probably always will be. I'm not sure you actually can extend the human lifespan dramatically, except, and this is why this is such a dark thing. I don't even really like to entertain it too much, but I texted to you, so now I gotta put my money where my mouth is.
I
They
did
ca-
that, folks. I'm sorry.
uh, there was, I don't know if they're still doing it, but there was a line of research where basically, if you took, I've only ever seen it in mice, maybe some other animal models. If you take like a really old mouse and circulate its blood with a really young mouse, the old mouse, its lifespan is dramatically increased.
Wow.
Uh,
You're
and it,
speaking biblical stuff, right?
yeah, yeah,
Well, because when when I look at Leviticus and I look at Deuteronomy, I look at even maybe some parts in Exodus, but God kind of tells us certain things. He tells us what to eat. He tells us how to stay clean. He tells us how to stay healthy. And then he also tells us sins to stay away from completely, because I think it relates a lot to what Nephilim were into, what,
Yeah.
this offspring of the fallen angels idea got into. And they were into, drinking human blood. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that tells us as believers is don't drink the blood, right? There's life in the blood. Now, it makes me think, right? If the fallen angels were to copulate with human women, right? And now they've developed this offspring that has the ability to maybe have the capabilities to live a very, very long time, or maybe they were immortal compared to the de-evolution of Adam and his son Seth and that lineage, where when you have these things that take place in this Genesis 6 conspiracy, why else would God say that, my spirit doesn't won't strive with man, forever, but now his days will be limited to 120 years. Like he's
Yeah.
putting a cap on
And
how long we can live.
it really is a cap, I believe. I mean, I just do not see people say things like, the first person who's going to be 150 years old has already been born, and I forget the guy's name. I shouldn't insult him because I published papers in his journal. So maybe it's good. I don't remember his name. Oh, I think it's DeGray, Aubrey DeGray. He, he went on Rogan like a year or two ago and said, it's been solved. We figured it out. Humans are going to live as long as you want, and it's just not true. And there's no evidence that it's true. And it's such a weird thing. I mean, I think it's like AI. It's so exciting. It's a savior, So medicine that will keep you alive forever, AI that will solve your problems and keep you alive forever. It's a savior thing. And it's a
Wow.
great way to attract money. I mean, look at this. If you're looking for funding, this is the way to do it. I just don't think it's true, and I don't think there's any evidence that it's true. Human lifespan is continuing to decrease. If we've cured aging, why are we not living just a little bit longer?
Yeah. Yeah.
So something's weird. I get the more conspiratorial side of things, where there is like an elite group who does have access to certain things and they do live for a long time. I don't know. But just as far as like mainstream academic stuff, it's just not true.
Yeah.
There's nothing going on. And so when I read in the Bible that there is this cap, it's like, oh, yeah, it seems correct, But
Right, right.
who
Well,
knows?
this could be what I think is also a part of like the first seal of Revelation, where you have the rider on the white horse, and he's got a crown and a bow, right? And he's conquering and to conquer. Well, there's a lot of pastors out there that have their own interpretation of what that means. A lot of pastors talk about that the bow is an actual weapon of war, and he's got a crown, and this is what's allowing him to go and to conquer like a king. I have a different perspective. I think that bow, especially in the Hebrew, when you actually get down into the roots of what it means, it just means bow, right? So God also uses a bow as well, right? And so what God's intention for the bow is a promise that he wouldn't flood the earth ever again, right?
Mm,
Specifically the rainbow. But when I get into, taking that word bow and making it a counterfeit promise, I can now see, and it makes a little bit more sense to how the Antichrist will make this false promise to people. And you kind of mentioned it
yeah.
as well, to where you mentioned something how AI, right? This like savior, or this transhumanism idea, the savior and mentality of it, right? Well, if AI, or which AI is merging with healthcare, and it could be possibilities that AI develops some sort, when it gets into the quantum computing realm,
Yeah.
it starts to develop, genetic coding to where, hey, we can cure cancer immediately, or we can even expand your lifetime, which could be a false promise, like what I'm saying. Or, you've got Neuralink, which is allowing people to now walk, right? And
Yeah.
and they're basically healing and doing miracles with these things. And I
Well,
see
and
it as a counterfeit
the
platform.
next thing they're curing after paraplegia is blindness. So, I mean, talk
So what
about
did Jesus do?
that's what
Jesus,
I'm saying.
right?
That's my point. Yeah.
Isn't that wild? Like
Yes,
how
it
it's
is
an
wild.
exact counterfeit, but
Yes.
it's doing the same miracles that Christ came and already did, right? Which would make sense for an antichrist to come and do. But I think
Yeah.
we're investigating something serious here.
I think so too. I mean, this has been a wild week. We've got this, Ben went on Joe Rogan talking about all these new discoveries in Egypt, right?
Oh, right,
Um,
right.
and we have, the meteor with the aliens on it coming to our planet any day now. And we've got like crazy political stuff and Robert F. Kennedy health. Everything is happening at once right now. And it's happening, and then AI and, cures to blindness, cures to aging, immortality. It's all happening in a culture that's become super, not atheist, but spiritual, but not religious. Like everyone right now is searching. Everyone is so vulnerable to like what you're calling like a counterfeit promise right now, because we were a Christian society, then we became almost like a rationalistic atheist society.
It's becoming
Now we're
secular
somewhere.
spiritual.
Now we're in between. Yeah, we're just like, yeah, there's probably something out there, but it's certainly not, Jesus or whatever,
Right.
mainstream thing my parents believed. It's certainly not that. So we are. I just feel like we are so primed. Whether it really is a supernatural thing, which I tend to believe, the Antichrist, or even if it's not, even if it's just evil people who want power, money, and influence taking advantage of this vulnerable time in our society. Either way, I think everyone has like something feels off right now sense. It's very
Right,
strange.
right.
Yeah.
We're getting pampered for something. In
Yes.
preparation, the conditioning, we're getting ready for something that is coming that will be primed to, you know. It's like
Yeah.
at my job, you know, we are told to do 2 minutes of CPR if we find someone that's unwitnessed cardiac arrest because we're priming the pump. Because when it comes to when we deliver that shock, there's more of a chance of survival, aka success,
Yeah.
right? With what with what we're doing here. So it's
It's so
man,
weird. I've always tended to believe in this whole, like it, but people use the phrase Hanlon's razor, and never attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence, right? More and more, I'm like, it might be malice. When I look into all these AI guys and like um all these, there's like AI cults, and occultist backgrounds to a lot of this stuff, and like some of it's not so bad. Like, is it something altruism, effective altruism? This is where like all these guys came out of. Elon Musk, Sam Altman, all this stuff, and it's just basically this idea that AI is evil and going to end the world. And yet they're in charge of all the AI companies. So I don't know
I
what's
know.
going on. I'm not sure what the deal is. There's this other group called Praxis that's like kind of has like a Atlas Shrugged kind of mindset. Like all the smartest people need to segregate themselves in Greenland or, some island somewhere and like figure out a
It's
way
like
to
this
save
concept
humanity.
of Elysium, where all the elites will kind of go to and bunker in
Yes.
and be safe
Yes.
during this cataclysm that they kind of have some sort of ideas coming. But I even make a connection with that in Revelation 13. I think it is. No, I think it's Revelation 6. Sorry, Revelation 6, right? Where the great and terrible day of the Lord has come, right? And his wrath is here. You know, the captains, the merchants, right? The mighty men of the earth hide in the mountains and
Oh,
tell
I
the
love that.
mountains to hide us and have the rocks fall on us to hide us from the from the wrath of the lamb. So it's
Wow.
like, what is going on here?
I
You
mean,
know,
yeah, this is stuff I probably would have like teased my friends and things for saying who are a little bit more conspiracy minded, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But why is everyone building a bunker underground or in the mountains?
but why
All
are they
these
specifically elites and
and,
merchants
and
and
tech
corporations?
the tech people, the same people who are into these weird kind of occultist backgrounds and AI are now, talking about the Antichrist in public, like Peter Thiel, and building bunkers in Hawaii, like Zuck. What
I
is
know.
going on? Something is up. Like, I feel like you really kind of have to bury your head in the sand at this point to not think there's something odd going on.
Yeah, and what's up with the connection with these guys, with this PayPal mafia? There's some sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
financial connection with these guys where, I mean, even Palantir has a contract with the IRS, right? And people who are out there dodging the IRS, like, you better be careful, because
Yeah.
AI is real. This defense contracting AI platform, Palantir, is is way more advanced than you can even think of. It's so significant that it's got a model of you that predicates
Yeah.
what you're going to do before you do it.
Yeah. To me, this is why AI is scary. Not because it's going to, you know, print a Arnold Schwarzenegger body and start killing people, because it makes the government, the elites, competent. You know, it makes them able to exert their will in a way that they just haven't been able to do before. So it is certainly frightening. But then I start looking at, what these guys believe, and I'm like, yeah, maybe they are building a body for the Antichrist. I mean, I don't know what it really just it is just a crazy, crazy, crazy thing, like, but now I'm really outside of my wheelhouse, but just like forever, these guys have been into this stuff, like all these old CIA projects and these things that like the European elites would fund. And what I don't know. I think, when I was a kid and I kind of decided I was an atheist, right? I kind of had this idea like if something were to happen that is evidence of the supernatural, whether good or evil, I know what side I'm going to pick, right? I'm going to pick the good side, you know? And I thought everyone must be that way. I don't know if that's true. I think a lot of these people were atheists, and then they get a taste of something, I don't know what it is. And like, I think they do go in on this other side. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I just assumed like people were either rational and atheist or they believed in God. No one would ever believe in the bad guy, right? No one would be on the bad side.
Right.
You either aren't religious or you believe in God. I don't think that's the way it splits up at all. I think atheism is like gone. Now we're moving into this new kind of frontier where they're really
Oh
it really is
yeah.
split down the middle. Like
Oh
people are
yeah.
all in on like Luciferian ideas and stuff.
Well,
I don't
this
get
brings
crazy.
up something too, to where Gary Wayne has said it on the show before, and he gets into this idea, which I'm fully subscribed to, because it meets a lot of research that I've done to what these elites really say in public, right? You've got Albert Pike, who's talked about, the three world wars, and then the third world war, Christianity,
Yeah.
Judaism, and the Islamic religions, or religion, right, will all of a sudden get destroyed in itself, and this Luciferian doctrine will come up and rise through this, and you've also got this idea of normalizing Gnosticism in
Oh,
whichever way that they can.
I was literally, as you were saying that, just thinking, because you mentioned Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Um, Sorry for
No,
hijacking.
you're
It's
good.
just
Do it.
we're on the same wavelength right now. I feel like my parents, certainly my grandparents, just the generations before us, if you would have told them like something's going to displace Christianity someday, it would have been another religion. It would have been Islam. It would have been whatever, Buddhism. I don't know. That is, I don't think what's going to happen. I mean, I know there are political and demographic and geopolitical things at stake here. I'm not saying like there's no external threats to Christianity, but I think the real threat, like the call is coming from within the house. You know what I mean? The Gnostic idea, that is by far the most, um, I don't know, threatening spiritual foundation, like theological framework to Christianity for sure, right? I mean, it has to be, because I find myself interested in it all the time. This is what folks are talking about on podcasts. These are the things that get you thinking like, wait, that's a good point, So I don't know how we address that. I think I like that you've been kind of leaning into that and talking to people, because I think that's the answer. And this is a quote I use too much in my books, but you know, the truth doesn't mind being challenged. If something's true, you can challenge it. You can push up against it. If something's a lie, you get defensive. People who are lying are defensive. And so when I think people get defensive about Gnosticism and stuff, and I think that's a bad approach. But the truth is, I don't really have the theological basis yet to know. So I think it's cool that you guys are exploring all these ideas.
Yeah, I mean, check this out, right? Like you have all the cultures, all the ancient religions, all the paganism, right? That stemmed from that, Cain and his lineage that came out of the garden, right? Because you obviously had Adam, you had Seth, and you had that lineage that called upon the name of the Lord, right? They had this monotheistic belief in the
Yeah.
one and only true God. And then you had the other bloodline passing and learning and contributing to this idea of paganism, right? The schism of Freemasonry, for example, right? And I think that's what Satan did even from the beginning, was to try and develop this aspect in culture, so that when it's the time in the end when he comes here to try and be, I mean, not try, but to be Antichrist, the foundation has been laid out, right? And I'm not saying all religions have it right, but the pattern is there. The pattern is there to be fulfilled, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Hmm.
All these ancient cultures with their pagan religions, they're set and they're ready to take on this world savior, but just in a different form, in a different view than how Christ came, right?
Yeah.
Christ came, he came humble, he came as a servant, he came and he died for mankind. I mean, that's how God shows his unconditional, ultimate amount of love to us. But the other flip side is this Antichrist is going to come and be the complete opposite.
Yeah.
With the word Antichrist, it's against Christ in a way, to where it's going to, this person's going to be a king. They're going to come bring
Yeah.
peace. They're going to conquer and rule the world in such a way.
And that like idea I had as a kid that no one would choose the bad guy. I completely could not disagree more strongly with that sentiment that I had when I was a kid. People are absolutely going to choose the bad guy. I mean, there's this type of personality that I like, that like repulses me. So I'm sorry if you're a listener and this sounds like you, but I encounter it all the time. You encounter it at the DMV, TSA, with the pandemic, the folks who would get mad at you if you didn't do something right. Or, I mean, I was going back and getting my PhD towards the end of, towards the beginning of the pandemic, and I didn't give out, right? And, dude, these people who had like, I don't want to say small jobs. I mean, I'm not trying to criticize them, but they normally didn't have any power, right? They wore tyranny like it fit them right. Like they just loved the power, to be able to make your day difficult, or make you test weekly, or make it difficult to register for a class or get a paycheck. Like the way that people take on that power so willingly was like really like gross to me. I couldn't believe it. And then like I read the Gospels and I'm like, oh, dude, these are the Pharisees, man. I mean, this is the Pharisee spirit. Like this, like, hey, let's just get people under our thumb with rules and with these ideas that is just totally miss the point of what we're trying to do, right? And so, man, when I realized that what Jesus was is kind of the opposite of that. Like he's actually kind of getting to the heart of the matter, like the point of these things. And there is this other kind of antithesis to that, which is like that spirit, that Pharisee kind of spirit. And I know people will line up for that kind of idea. Like anyone who comes and gives them power to control others, they're going to love it. A certain percentage of people, I don't know,
Right. Isn't it so
30%,
amazing,
50%.
though, how God has always been one step ahead of the devil? Because if you think
Yes.
about it, right, the devil influenced the Pharisees to do this, or influenced the Israelites, the Jews, right, to have this alternate view of what the actual Messiah was to look like. And so when
Yeah.
that Messiah did come here, Satan had this idea, had influenced this idea in his own people to kill him, because Satan thought he was going to get God, right? Because you have to think.
Yeah.
Satan in the garden was also, the serpent, right, was told that his head was going to get crushed, right? But he's going to
Okay.
bruise his heel, right? So he had this, he knew that death was coming for him. So he's trying to outplay God in his own game. But it's so
Yep.
funny that God came and actually, came to die
Yeah.
purposely, because
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus talked about it plenty of times in the gospel. He's like, the time is not yet. It's almost, or he's like, hey, the time is near, right? And he's like, hey, it is the time now, right? And even when Peter was trying to protect Christ from getting captured, he was
Yes.
even telling Peter, get behind thee, Satan, right? It's like, what?
Yep.
This is
Yeah.
one of the best friends of Jesus, and he's
I
trying to
know.
protect him. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. And it's like, God's like, no, this is
It's
my cup, you know?
it's so Hitchens, the atheist, who's passed away. He always used to make this comment about like, the world is so big. Why would God choose to come to this insignificant backwater part of the world and only preach to, 12 people or whatever, 1,000 people? It just doesn't make any sense, right? And I'm like, okay, that was at one point kind of like a compelling argument to me. And then it's interesting to me, like that the Jews, they expected the Messiah to be a military figure, right? And they got Jesus, who was not that, right? And but he ended up doing what they wanted their Messiah to do, which was he took Christianity, took over Rome. It became the Holy Roman Empire. So he accomplished the military conquest in a way without violence. And it is just so funny. Like, how can you say choosing to come to that place on earth that's an insignificant backwater town when it transformed the Roman Empire and the rest of the world today? Today, the world is still split into East and West. And
Right,
so it is just, it's like the arguments against it end up being the arguments for it. It's just so compelling. It's
right,
the opposite of what you think. And anyway,
right.
yeah.
No,
So,
it's beautiful, man. It really
yeah,
is. I think it's the greatest love story of all time, but it's
yeah,
super you know, like tough and awesome all at the same time. If that makes any
yeah.
sense.
Every story is like some echo of the biblical story. I remember hearing people say stuff like that. I'm like, no, it's not, but it really is. I mean, all these themes are just anyway, yeah, sorry.
It's crazy,
Getting
man.
off track.
It's crazy. No, no, I love it, man. The way we started this show is amazing, right? I think the Holy Spirit just kind of took over there and we were passing the ball pretty good there, man. I tell you what, we'll switch segments up a little bit here. I want to get through some more of your book. I want the audience to kind of be receptive and understand
Yeah,
if you could break it down to us a little bit on a third grade level for us with
sure.
some of these
Yeah.
concepts.
So this is a huge, gear shift idea here, but you know, today to be a scientist doing research, full time or most of the time, which by the way is very difficult to do. It's very challenging. Um, I'd say 9 out of 10 people who get their PhD do nothing with it. I don't want to say do nothing with it, but they don't do with it what the intended purpose is, which is to do science all day for a job. Most of them probably go to a lot of them go to teaching, a lot of them go to industry, but those who remain doing research all the time, they tend to think that, and this is true maybe for half the country, but they tend to think that humans don't have souls and that there's no such thing as free will. And, just a brief political tangent, like if you think that, I'm not sure you're fit for society. You know what I mean? I don't think you're fit to be a physician. I don't think you're fit to work at Starbucks. Like if you don't think human beings have souls, you know, what do you, I don't know. It's just crazy to me. And I used to think that, so I'm not, not trying to be mean, but, anyway, so I wanted to write a book about, well, okay, they think that. What did the people who came up with all these foundational principles think? What did the people who came up with quantum mechanics, quantum physics, all the basic neuroscience principles, what did they think? And it's not what they thought. They knew for sure they were studying their creator. They 100% believe that. And when you look at the results of some of these experiments, it's no wonder they thought that because the results are insane. And so that's, I guess, the primer. So I can actually get into the nitty gritty if you want. I don't know how
Yeah, let's
scientific you
do
want
it,
to get,
man.
but
I'm here for it all, baby. I'm
okay.
here.
So kind of the most controversial thing that all these like online arguments are about is the double slit experiment. And so one interpretation of the double slit experiment, I'll save the details unless you want to get into them, is that physical stuff isn't really there. It's not really real unless some conscious agent is perceiving of it, you know? And so that's kind of a good way to define consciousness is like there's this bubble around your body that you perceive the world with, vision, hearing, touch, and also your inner world. And so as a conscious agent, we have this inner world and we experience things. We experience emotions. We can play memories like film reels in our mind. We can look at a sunset. Like it's an experiential phenomenon that can't be explained by computation, which is the mainstream theory of how the brain works. It's a computer. And so when we look at quantum physics kind of supports this idea that no, consciousness stuff is not just balls on sticks, which is like how we learn chemistry, like, okay, here's water, we have the oxygen, and you have two hydrogen balls stuck to it. That's not really the way the world works. It's more like our consciousness, our soul, our perception pulls things into reality, into our reality, kind of like a video game character.
And we compute it, right?
Exactly. Rendering is like the best analogy for this. I mean, if you think back to, whatever video game you played when you were a kid, Legend of Zelda for me, when Link, walks into a room and sits at a table, us being outside of Link's world, we know that table's not really there. It's just being rendered from data storage into a form that he can interact with. And I think quantum physics, quantum mechanics, although people obviously push back on this idea, it kind of is like that. Like that this world, our brain kind of pulls this world into reality, but it's a shared reality. If I close my eyes and walk across the room, but you put a stool in front of me, I'm going to trip over it. Right. So it's like a massively multiplayer online game. And the atheists kind of use this idea. It's like, oh, that's cool. It's a simulation, right? The simulation hypothesis. And it's weird because that's a religion. Like that is a religious idea. We live in a simulation that was created, and we're created agents living in a created world, right? That's a religious philosophy. Obviously it's religious. And,
it's kind of like the agnostic view, right? It's like that there is this creator. They just they're not specific on who it is.
Yes. I would say the simulation hypothesis was sort of like a bridge for atheists to kind of walk over to agnosticism,
Yeah.
But now if you're someone like me who's been just like hyper rationalist, you don't believe in miracles your whole life, and now the field that taught you not to believe in miracles wants you to believe that you are a created agent living in a created world, and that this simulation burst forth from nothingness, however many billion years ago. Now you're asking me to believe in miracles. And so then I think the position I was put in, and I think a lot of hopefully open-minded atheists were put in, is, oh, so miracles definitely are real, right? We were taught they weren't, but now our teachers who taught us that are asking us to believe in miracles. I need to re-examine everything I thought I knew about religion and the Bible, and et cetera. And so the book is kind of that story of how I, although it's not about me, but it's how I think it's reasonable and rational to say, you know what, I need to sit down and read the Bible and take it seriously and look at the rhymes between these things. I mean, when you, throughout the Bible, like the idea of giving up the ghost, well, there's all sorts of new theories of consciousness that kind of make the body sound like a receiver for a soul. And so the idea of giving up the ghost, I mean, it fits that perfectly. And the idea of belief, I say to you, if you have faith as small as the grain of the mustard seed, you can tell this mountain to move. Like there's quantum mechanics principles in that. And the book obviously goes into detail. And so I'm not writing it. This is what a lot of scientists do. Sorry, then I'll end this point. A lot of scientists, they look at religious ideas and they try to explain them away as if you can explain them, then they're no longer supernatural. I don't think that's the case. If you can explain supernatural phenomena, that means they are real. You know what I mean? Like if you can actually detail how they work, that doesn't take away from their validity, it adds to it. And so that was kind of my premise for the book. Anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And well, I mean, you make a good point too with the fact that the body is like this receiver. It's like a
Yeah.
receiver and a carrier, which
Yeah.
to me which then would be something like a vessel, right? We're just
Yes.
not technically we're not being our body's not transporting anything to go somewhere.
No,
Or
yeah.
maybe it kind of is. And this is the playing field to see where you go throughout
Yeah.
all these narratives and tests and stuff. And you have the choice,
I think so.
after it all. But even the Bible talks about that, we have a body, a spirit, and a soul.
Yes.
And I think that the body is the carrier, the receiver, like you're talking about. The
Yep.
spirit is who we actually are, the design, right? And the soul is what lives forever.
Yeah.
So the spirit and the soul are kind of intertwined together, right?
Hmm.
It's just, there's no one out there like Trevor. There's no one out there like Stephen. There's no one out there like, whoever, is alive today, pretty much. This is what makes you unique, like a fingerprint.
And when you look, yes, absolutely. And when you look at the new ideas about consciousness, they sound like that. Now, granted, people push back. The mainstream theory is still that you're just a computer, but the first psychologist, his idea was transmission theory. Now that's mocked today. So
So what is
that
that? What is
so
transmission theory?
there's kind of two theories: transmission theory or production theory. So production theory is that you generate in your mind the way a computer would generate something, your conscious experience. So it's like a little computer in there booting up visions for you to see and interpreting things out there. And so conscious experience is produced by you. Transmission theory is that no, yes, the body is a machine. Yes, absolutely, a biological machine. But there is something special that's not purely physiological or computational that comes from somewhere else. And you are tapped into that. And that was dismissed pretty quickly. I mean, a lot of notable people bought into that. Tesla bought into that. A lot of, Harvard psychologists bought into that, but it went away. Um, Now, when we're looking inside the brain, which we don't understand nearly as well as people would have you believe, um, we're finding weird things. Without me going into a big rant about why computation can explain consciousness, I just want to talk about these structures in your neurons called microtubules. And so these are this like really complex network that exists within each neuron. Keep in mind, there's billions and billions of neuronal connections. Within each neuron, there's a complex network of microtubules. And we used to assume that these structures are basically just like highways for protein that literally walks. You can watch videos online on, if anyone's interested, Google vesicular trafficking microtubules. It's amazing. I mean, just watch that video. It's like, okay, God exists, But but the idea was that they're just passive. These things, they're just roads. And now we kind of think when you look at them that they might have, in quotes, quantum properties. They're dipoles, so they're like a bit. They can be 1 or 0, right? And there's trillions of them. And so there are sort of this information system. This is where it gets a little weird, but I'm going to throw it out there that could technically be entangled with something. And, quantum entanglement, no one doubts that that's real now. Particles can be entangled across any distance. Here's why that's important. The main criticism of production theory is, well, what's the signal, right? We know how radio works, right? We know how we can communicate with light and fiber optic cables. Electricity can travel along wires. What's the signal for the spirit, right? If you're an antenna, where's the radio signal? And, there isn't a detectable one. And so with quantum entanglement though, and if the microtubule, uh, dimers, they're called these tubulin dimers, if they can be entangled with something, well, now you have a signal. Now you have a means for something to travel from one place to another instantaneously. And so the idea being that basically you could be animated by something. You could be the body is physical, it is a machine, but you could be animated by something. Something
What do you mean by animated?
well, um, I mean, what I mean is embodied with the soul. I mean, that's what
Okay,
I
okay.
mean. But
Gotcha.
if you wanted to kind of try to take like a more scientific take on it, kind of like the way that, you might embody an avatar in a virtual reality video game, right?
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I
You
thought. Okay.
your spirit, your soul exists outside of this world that you're entering and animating this character, your body. And so this is sort of, again, kind of an idea put forward by atheists, which is wild to me. Everybody's searching for an answer.
Right.
Um, and so they use those arguments to say like, no, 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 there's no God, there's no soul. Instead, your body's tapped into a quantum field emanating from the center of the universe, right? And this field animates your body. And I'm like, come on, this is the spirit, being breathed into your body, right? This is so clearly, I think, evidence for the supernatural phenomena, not an alternative explanation. And that's a nuance that people struggle with. I mean, I've been more and more kind of trying to argue about like the physicality of the supernatural. Like just because something is physical doesn't mean it's divine, right? So like when Jesus healed a blind man's eyes, if you were to study his eyes before and after, there would be a physical change. You'd be able to say like, oh, look, the lens is no longer opaque. The retina has been healed. That doesn't mean it's not supernatural. And so I do notice I kind of get pushback from obviously all the scientists hate me, but even sometimes the more religious folks are like, maybe that I'm intellectualizing the supernatural too much. And maybe I am, but for my background, that's what kind of led me
Right.
to
Well, as
God.
a
Right.
scientist, that's what you kind of have to do, though,
Yes.
right? You've got to break it down fundamentally to where you can go, okay, this makes sense because of this,
Right.
right?
Right. Like I want to know it's real.
Yeah.
And so, and that's probably some sort of weakness on my part, that I don't just believe it to be real, but I want to know it's real. And so, anyway, so I think some of these spiritual, supernatural things, they can have a physicality to them. Like your brain can have a literal antenna for a soul, and it's still a soul. It's still a supernatural force. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's kind of I mean, some people might see a contradiction in that, but God made a physical world. So it's not strange to believe that some of these things would be physical.
Well,
Anyway,
he even walked in the garden, right? So you're
exactly.
talking about the Spirit of God actually walking in the garden in his
Yeah.
purest form. So, like, how do you how do you understand that in a material form, right? Like, that's I
Yeah.
see what you're trying to do. It's cool. I agree with it because I think that even with the supernatural and the spiritual part of our materialized world, that these things do exist. Maybe we don't have the, capabilities to perceive it, but it's there.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Obviously, it's never like we're going to get to a point where like, oh yeah, okay, we know God exists because of this math problem. Like, no. But I like taking the arguments against God and realizing that they're actually arguments for God. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think that's what a lot of this stuff is. Like when you see hyper rationalist atheist folks trying to explain like that we're quantumly entangled with some source somewhere in the universe. I'm like, this is religious. This like you just stop. Just just give in,
Yeah.
like give up the fight. Like you're saying there's a ghost in the machine. There's a spirit that animates the flesh. That's what you're saying.
Well, I
You
want to
just
mention something too, like why the occult is so interesting to people and why they're so curious of it and why there may be a science behind it. It's because they're doing these things in this scientific realm that the mainstream does not get involved with. I think there are some
yeah.
occultists in the mainstream, don't get me wrong. And I think some of the scientists are the new age of occultists. It's just because science is advancing in that crazy weird way right now. But I think that's why the occult is very just is practiced, because that's
Yeah.
the science to where they can make these connections with the supernatural uh, you know uh, just world that we are a part of.
Yeah, I could see, like, for me, when I see, like, the evidence, I go, "Oh, man, like, God is real, and I need to just be radically humble," right? If God is real, I need to be radically humble. I do think maybe some people see the tie-ins between the supernatural and the physical world and the evidence for it, and they go, "Oh, maybe I could control this, maybe I could be powerful." It's hard for me to imagine that. Like, I can't imagine having so much hubris that you go from, like, hyper rational to, "Oh, I can wield the power of God." Like, to me, that seems like something out of a movie. Like, it doesn't seem real, but maybe. I mean, maybe that is what
Yeah,
some
like
people do.
picture this, man. Like Paul even talks about in the Bible, he describes to you the three heavens. The first heaven, specifically what that is. Think of it like of the atmosphere that, encompasses our earth. The second heaven being what's considered space, right?
Yeah.
This idea of that there's this something occupies in this area of mass, and then also the third heaven, which this is where God dwells at. And so
I
you're
love
like,
this
wait,
idea.
so technically
Yeah.
you're like, Paul, you're telling me that we're all kind of connected here. It's just maybe distance or dimensions that kind of segregate these things. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I love that idea. This is an argument that I've heard made about, like, free will is, you know, if again, atheists, they love quoting scripture. It's so funny. And now that I'm actually, like, reading scripture, like, I get it. I know I've probably done it. I know I've done it. But anyway, they'll say something like, "Oh, it says here that, God knew you before you were born," or that, it's in the book of life that what the outcome is going to be, or something. I'm sure but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, and it's just this idea that, like, God knows what's going to happen, right? And so if that's true, how can there be free will? Like, your future's already determined. It's predetermined. And it's really just a silly argument. I mean, I'm talking, like, from the atheist perspective now. I believe God exists, but from their perspective, if God exists, he doesn't live up in the sky. He lives outside of space and time, right? He's the creator of the box we're in, you know?
Right.
And so the idea that he would be, like, subject to the same physical rules of space and time as us is, like, silly. And, just it's a silly metaphor, but it's a good metaphor. I mean, if you record a football game and you Google the score and you watch the game, you know what's going to happen, right? But you didn't strip those football players of agency and free will, right? They're free agents, right? They're making choices, and so you, in that metaphor, in that analogy, you exist outside of space and time relative to those football players. That's probably the way it works. You know what I mean? It's just it's so
Right.
funny. Just just look, like, it's kind of sad actually. Like, going through scripture and looking for gotchas, you know? And I'm so grateful that that kind of rational atheist movement is sort of over, but it's not completely over. There's still quite a few people who think that way. So,
Yeah, it's amazing, man, to really kind of start to just to try and break this stuff down. And so I even think that with this connection of the spiritual and the physical, we just haven't, we haven't explored how it's how we can understand it. But do you think a lot of these things come from like ideas and ideas becoming beliefs and beliefs
mhm.
becoming manifested? That makes any sense?
Yeah, I mean, there's There are a lot of ideas about that. Now, within the kind of quantum physics world, there's kind of like also like a hyper rational and then more spiritual kind of interpretation of all these experiments. But there, there's one branch of this kind of idea called cubists, quantum Bayesianness. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but it's Bayes statistics, like inferential statistics, and it's this idea that um, it's not so much. See, we didn't really get into the details of the double slit, but it's not so much seeing the table that makes the table manifest in your reality. It's believing that the table's there. And so there's like a belief-based component to the way matter renders itself into reality. And therefore, belief or faith can manifest itself in the real world. And so it's interesting thinking about that when you read just the recurrent theme of faith in the New Testament, for sure. Just that, like, if you really believe something, it is true. Like Peter walking on the water, he gets nervous, he starts to fall, he's grabbed, and it's like, oh, why do you have such little faith? Um,
Right.
and so, yeah, I think there is an aspect to that. I think it gets turned really quick into like The Secret and manifestation and like Buddhist, you can levitate kind of stuff. And maybe that's all true. And maybe it is the same principle, but I kind of shy away from that idea. I don't
Sure.
know.
Have you well, because I say that, and I'm not contributing this to anything that a part of Christianity, but I think it's more of an occult practice
Yeah.
to where, you know, there's some sort of science behind it. And, the Tulpa effect, for example, right? The ancient Tibetan Buddhists, would practice these things to make contact with, manifested beings like right in front of them. This is called like, contact of the seventh kind, to where you can
Yeah.
actually meditate and these things be manifested in front of you. Either it be some sort of alien idea or it be some sort of angel idea. I think these things of the spiritual realm have the ability to materialize and dematerialize into whatever they want to be perceived at, because we have to abide by certain physics here, right? And our makeup really, that designates what we're compartmentalized to do, to be able to do, right? We can't, I can't become a puddle and go down a drain right
Right.
now. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? Like there's
Mm.
things stopping me from doing that. But things in the spiritual realm, they seem to have free range with some of these things. Why else
Yeah.
would the Bible say that, even Lucifer masquerades himself as an angel of light? You know,
Yeah.
how are these, ideas of lamb appearing to Aleister Crowley, right? Which he
Yeah.
ushered in through ritual practice. It's like, what's going on here?
Okay. Well, obviously I don't know, but I have an idea. Um,
Mhm.
are you familiar with how a radio receiver works? I wasn't until recently, so this is not like
No,
this.
no.
Okay. All right. So, I didn't know this. This was told to me. Uh, so basically, there's a copper wire somewhere in your car, right? And however long that wire is, it will pick up radio signals with that wavelength. And so if you want to change the station, you change the length of the wire. And that's what turning the knob does. It changes how long the wire, it unspools it, right? It makes it longer or you make it shorter. And so there are literal, like a sine wave like this, right? And if the distance between the crests and the troughs, if it matches the length of that wire, you're tuned in to that station. And so this is a really wild idea. To call it speculative would be like the biggest understatement of the year. But we're learning things about the way the brain works that are really interesting. So there's this protein called tau, and
Right.
it
And
stabilizes.
sorry, I don't mean to
Yeah,
cut you off
yeah,
because
yeah.
I
No,
have
no.
to say a little. So I've learned about this tau and amyloid.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
again, like I'm like a nerd when it comes to medical science, but please go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah.
I've because my dad may have, potential for getting Alzheimer's and stuff,
Yeah.
and my grandmother died of it. And who knows? Maybe it's going to hit me one day. But carry on.
Yeah, no, there's a huge genetic component. That's actually what I do for work, is trying to figure out why ApoE4 causes Alzheimer's, which is the genetic risk factor for it, and other genetic risk factors. That's my actual job. So I got to kind of be careful with what I'm saying here because I don't want to, I hate for this clip to be played to me at some point when I'm applying for a grant or something. But full disclosure, I'm freewheeling right now, everybody. Okay, this is a personal belief I have that is not related to my professional views on this stuff. So tau, the idea was that, tau stabilizes microtubules. And that right there should like set off alarm bells. Like, wait, microtubules? Like microtubules aren't fundamental to, why would this work? And so basically, and actually it turns out microtubules are important to like every neurodegenerative and psychiatric disease. But anyway, so the idea was that tau would phosphorylate, it would come off the tubule, and the tubule would disintegrate. And so when the tubule disintegrates, the neuron eventually will disintegrate. You get these tangles in the brain. But that's called tau dogma. It's funny that it's called dogma. And but some papers have been coming out that show that actually what tau does is it makes the microtubules more labile, meaning they're less stable. And so when tau comes off, they get rigid. The microtubules get rigid. This is completely opposite of the way we thought tau worked, and it's hotly debated and stuff. But this is interesting. You think of a microtubule like that copper wire in your radio. A healthy microtubule, it can resonate like a guitar string, it doesn't actually vibrate like that. It's different. The tubulin dimers flip, but it's for the metaphor. Think of it like a guitar string. When it loses tau, the resonant part of that tube gets shorter. So you're kind of no longer tuned in to whatever frequency. Now, again, totally freewheeling right here. Whatever frequency you're normally tuned into, whatever frequency your soul travels on, right? And so that is one idea of why you get altered consciousness in Alzheimer's disease. And when I say one idea, no one's really saying this publicly, but it's an interesting idea. And if you start to think of the brain like an antenna, and you start to think about the brain like an antenna in spiritual contexts, like meditation, channeling, prayer, you are maybe kind of dialing into these other, I hate to use the word, but frequencies, right? You're kind of tuning the knob. You're tuning the radio knob to other planes, right? And so that's a crazy thing to say, but if that's true, it kind of would explain this idea of like dimensions, right? Like we live in this physical world and we're tapped into a very specific frequency that enables conscious experience. But just to the left of that, or just to the right of that, is this other, in quotes, dimension. And that maybe you can tap into that through occult practices, psychedelics, whatever. I'll stop because I could keep going, but I don't know. Does that make any sense to you?
Oh, it makes absolute sense, man. And I really think there is a scientific connection to just what we're getting into. Like, for example, the virgin birth, right, of Christ. Yeah. It's like, well, how did that actually take place? Something had to activate the fertilization process of Mary's egg.
I would love to know. Yeah.
I mean, they say it's zinc today, right? It's like zinc is this thing that activates, which kind of creates this flash of light, right, on the embryo, and then all of a sudden, this is what causes fertilization.
I was literally writing about this last night, man. This is so crazy. So I really argued against this light at conception idea because I read the paper. And to me, it sounded like, and this is a common thing to do in scientific papers, is they mapped colors to certain concentrations of zinc. And so it's a way to visualize something invisible, right? If you have a sensor that can sense zinc, well, you can map concentration values to different colors. And the highest color was white. And so because the egg releases a ton of zinc at fertilization, there's like a flash of light. And so I argued against this whole, because the way the story was presented is there's like a visible flash of light. And I was explaining, no, that's not true. But then I had someone explained to me, and I don't remember the exact details, but it sounds like there might actually be a flash of light in addition to zinc.
So I want to mention something too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What you're going to get from the secular view of this world versus the faithful, the Christian view of this world, it's two separate narratives. It's basically the same story, just told in a
Yes.
different way. So you're
Yes.
going to have the secular world try and justify things based off of how we can understand and perceive things and how it can deceive the world with this narrative, or you can take what the Bible says, right, in a way to where like the beginning of every life is a flash of light. Like in a way, it's the light of men, right? And God gives this ability to the egg, and I think it has to do with consciousness. I think it has to do with, because without consciousness, it can't sustain life or develop into life.
This is where microtubules get interesting again too, because there's something going on with microtubules and light. Okay. And so what I mean by that is, if you take microtubules in a petri dish. Oh, I forgot to tell you the most important part about microtubules.
Mm-hmm.
So you work with anesthesia, I assume?
No, they won't let
Okay. But I mean,
the
you're
county I
familiar.
work in mess with that stuff.
Yeah. But you're familiar with the concept, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so if you were to invite an anesthesiologist colleague to this podcast and ask them to explain how anesthesia works, you will never see a more uncomfortable person in your life. The whole idea of like getting defensive, is a bad look. They would certainly get defensive, because the reason being is that we don't know. We don't know how it works. And people, listen, I say this, people point me to papers, but I'm like, read the paper. The whole paper, it's 10,000 words of us saying we don't know how anesthesia works. You know what I mean? In every permutation you could possibly imagine of saying we don't know how it works.
It's kind of like saying we don't know how the volume turns up or down, but I can control it.
Yes,
You know what I'm saying?
that is the analogy for anesthesia. Like that's it. Like we know it does what we need it to do. That's how we define anesthesia. Does it knock someone out without killing them? Okay, it's anesthesia.
Right.
And so what's fascinating about anesthesia is it is what turns consciousness off. Right? It is a drug. It is a drug that turns consciousness off. So if we can figure out how it works, we know where consciousness comes from. Guess what? Okay, this is the coolest part about microtubules. So you can hit microtubules with a laser, and they you turn the laser off and they glow, and so they can basically carry and transmit photons within the tube, because microtubules are hollow inside, and so photons, particles of light, can travel in them unless they're exposed to anesthesia. Light,
Wow.
they no longer luminesce.
Huh.
And
so it's an antagonist.
Well, and this is even cooler. So if you take mice and you give them anesthesia, it knocks them out. If you take mice, you give them a drug that binds to microtubules but has no effect. It just steals the binding sites to microtubules. And then you give them anesthesia, it doesn't knock them out.
Really?
So really, I mean, that's almost enough to say microtubules are the source of consciousness. And the fact that unconscious microtubules do not luminesce and conscious microtubules do, it indicates light plays a role.
Is there a way to dictate the size of microtubules? Or is it just something that is just such a phenomenon that we just don't?
It's a standard thing. I think it's like 9 nanometers or something. It's a standard size.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Oh, these things are
well,
tiny.
This gets into something. I know we've texted a little bit about this, to where I've done some research where there's a thing called, quantum dot technology, which gets down to basically, graphene nanoparticles that range from 2 to 10 nanometers in size, and they're able to attach to certain receptor sites of which they choose. Maybe it's just a whole global thing once it's put in the body.
That's interesting. That's an interesting idea. That will take us down some wild rabbit holes, but I'm not changing the subject. We come back to that.
You're good.
I was just going to say, like, light might be involved in consciousness, and light's capable of entanglement. So light here can be entangled with light somewhere else. And so the idea that there would be light at fertilization and that right now there's light inside your brain that might be related to consciousness, and that when you do like emit a low level of photons when you're living, and then when you die, you stop. So light, there's something going on with light, and then oh, where am I going with this? Oh, okay. Hard subject change. You just talked about this on another show, so we don't have to go like way into it. But like the whole Shroud of Turin thing, it does seem like at the moment of resurrection, there was an intense flash of light. It does seem that way. I mean, I know, trust me, I know the arguments all around this, up and down, better than most people. So I understand some of the skeptical takes on it, but the best explanation involves the image was formed by an intense flash of light, probably plasma, but light nonetheless.
Right. I know Ellie Marzulli gets into it a little bit, and I
Yep.
covered it with him with an episode in the past. I wanted to share a verse with you, and this is John chapter 1, right? And it says, because this might kind of be something here, right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men.
Yeah.
And
That's
the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended not.
this
So I wonder what
this is
that is meaning. What are you
but
talking about, John?
but man, this is the kind of stuff like that is what I'm trying to get at with my last book, with God's Eye View. When I don't think you've read the last couple chapters, but when you do, you can't ignore these things. I mean, when you realize that maybe physics just is, maybe the physical world just is an information system, qubits. That's what John Wheeler and Feynman would call them or whatever. And so if life is an information system, how interesting that in the beginning was the word, you know, language being an information system. And then if light's involved in consciousness, if the ability for light to become entangled might have to do with consciousness, if there's light at conception, if maybe there's a flash of light at the resurrection, um, and then that passage you just read, like I feel like atheists have to contend with this. They won't, obviously, because they reject the premise, but um, there's rhymes. There's real rhyming between like modern scientific understanding of the way the world works and ancient biblical understanding of how the world works.
Yeah, I know, man. There is something to it, man. So we went over pretty much a good amount that we didn't cover in the previous episode that we did together. You know, let's get into like eternity.
Okay.
What do you think this concept, right? Because I love this, man. I love this
A
talk
nice light
because
topic.
yeah, eternity, right? A lot. I've talked with a general, my lieutenant at work, and he's a Christian, and which is it's cool because I got switched to his station a few years ago, and we've totally hit it off. And it's just fun to have someone, that's on your truck that also believes what you believe, and you kind of get into some in-depth conversations at work. So one of these conversations was eternity, and a lot of people get this idea that in eternity, all we're going to be doing is worshiping God, right? Like you're
Uh,
going to be singing all day, every day, and you're going to be worshiping with God, right? But I'm honestly curious. I don't really subscribe to that idea, but then again, I do not know. A lot of this is all complete speculation. I think there's going to be jobs. I
yeah.
think there's going to be jobs in heaven. I
Isn't
think
there isn't there a theological basis for that though? I feel like I've heard people talk about that before.
I think so. I'm not just too familiar with it. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
something that I just haven't gotten, I just haven't gone down that road yet, but I must. It's
Well, I
just
mean,
there's
this is the question. It is the next life in this other plane we're talking about? Because I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of listen. I'm not the guy to ask, so I'm asking you. It
Mhm.
seems like there's a lot of allusion to like the next life being a physical place, like a new heaven and a new earth. You
Right,
know,
and you got this new body. This is your
and a
actual
new
spiritual
body.
body, right? This is
Yes,
actually who you're defined as, right? And you're like,
right.
man, why was I in that suit? Well, that old suit because I think it's a sinful suit now. It
Yeah.
has become a part of this process of de-evolution. It's just been,
Right.
it's just what took place in the garden, man, really destroyed and ruined everything. This is why it was done, right, by the adversary, by Satan.
Yeah.
To where we were once built in this idea, and then it's like it's almost like maybe we were the ultimate McDonald's burger that just sustained life for like months and months and months and never changed, right? And there was just no aging, there was nothing. It just was filled with people don't get, we weren't a McDonald's burger, but my point is just
I get what you
there's
mean.
you
Yeah.
get what I'm following, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, and I think what the biggest thing too of why we were created in this realm is because the angels, and all of the characters of the hierarchy system that God created. There was this first creation, right? Because I always circle back around to the book of Job. And the book of Job says that, that the angels shouted out for joy as God laid out the foundations of the world, right? And,
Yeah.
this is when God's questioning Job, where were you when I laid the foundations of the world, when all of
Yeah.
the angels sang for glory? And
Yeah.
so there was this kind of first part of this heavenly family that was created. But because there were adversaries. We know Satan wasn't the only adversary. There was angels that followed with him, explained as well in Jude, right? There were angels that left their habitation, they left their estate, their first estate, and now they're chained in darkness, right? So my point is there in this spiritual realm, there was the probability for corruption was maybe higher than where we were created here in Eden. We were created here in Eden to where we were to be this almost like this creation of who the birthright was actually supposed to go to now,
Uh-huh.
right? You
Uh-huh.
have this jealousy from the first child, the first
The,
family
the
creation,
older brother.
the older brother, right? And now that's this issue. And I think we were created in these some sort of physical heavenly bodies, but we were also created, I think, in this form with these laws because it in a way protected us and kept us from rebelling against God, if that makes sense. So why else would Satan have to come here and deceive us? And then now we fell and
Yeah.
sin entered.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, it is interesting. I haven't been to church much, but I certainly never heard these kinds of conversations. But like the angels, they do seem to rebel. You know, I
Right.
mean, they seem to rebel, and like some of these kind of extra biblical books seem to always be talking about angelic rebellions and stuff, Book of Enoch and stuff.
Imagine if you had these superpowers,
I mean,
right?
they are gods, like little g gods, right? Like
Right.
these are angelic beings, you know? Um, and so yeah, I could get that. Like, hey, some someone needs to be deserving of this birthright, and maybe that's where humanity came from. I that makes sense to me. I also wonder, like, is it kind of like a now I'm just talking crazy, but is it kind of like a test is the wrong word, but like a fair trial, like why were we were given free will in a physical world. Like, is it like a test, but not a test to see like what our merits are, but like a test to determine like, is it fair or not? Like, is
Mhm.
this it's not a test of God, but it's like a test of the premise, like, what does it mean to be free? Like, can you be free and serve God? Like, because that seems to be a recurring theme with all of these like angelic rebellions, is that this desire for like unrestrained freedom, like a resentment for not being the best, uh, so
Right,
now I'm
right.
just rambling, but it's
Oh
like
no,
it feels like there's something there.
yeah, and especially too, like you make a good point, right? Where it's like a free, I'm sorry, it's a fair trial, right? Like
Yeah.
imagine this, how much it's fair because there's a lot of grace and mercy on
Yep.
our side. because I think it's because, number one, there's this detachment from us and the Heavenly Father, right? To where he's not physically like here in
Yes.
front of us, or else the whole
Yes.
world, this would not
We
be
we
the
have no
game.
choice but to believe. Right.
Exactly, right? So
Yeah.
so now it's not like that in the other dimension, because they know he's real and they've decided to now make this decision. And it's like you're getting ready to do the murder in front of the judge. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, do it.
But you don't know that the judge is there. That's what makes it a fair trial. It's like
Right,
you
that's what
don't
I'm
know
saying,
that
yeah.
you're being watched. That's
Right,
what it is. Because I mean, human psychology, we know like if you're being watched, you act differently, you know? And so it's like we many of us believe that we're not being watched. Like the world has been set up in a way where it's reasonable to believe we're not being watched. And that you're right, that's what makes it a fair trial. This is again, not to go back to the shroud thing, but like the shroud is the best physical evidence you could ever hope for. But it might not be real, but it is, good physical evidence. And I actually talked to Dr. I think I don't know if it's pronounced Giulio, but Dr. Fonti, he's like the main shroud researcher in Italy. And he has this whole idea about it, which I liked. I thought it was kind of poetic. It's just that all all the evidence points to the shroud being real, but we can't know for sure that it's real. Just like we can't know for sure that God is real. We were given free will, and if we could definitively prove the shroud is real, that would take free will away from us because we would know God is real. We would know Jesus resurrected, and we can't know that. Like God will not allow us to know that with
right,
like
right,
physical evidence, like beyond
right.
any doubt, right? And so ultimately you just have to choose. And so he kind of positions the shroud kind of like God. Like there's so many signs that he's there, and there's so much evidence that he's there, but we can't absolutely know unless we choose to believe. And so that seems to be central to whatever this is. Like whatever this thing is that we're in,
I
I
agree,
just feel
man.
like we're being asked to make a choice.
And here's another thing too, just to circle back around to this, to previously what we were getting into. Like, the devil is used many times in the New Testament, right? Specifically devil, right? And this
Yeah.
word comes from the Greek word diabolos, right? And this word diabolos means actually traducer, right? It actually means false accuser. So
Mm.
so the
There's a
devil,
courtroom
yeah.
wording
So
even. Yeah.
look, he is a lawyer, and
Yeah.
he's not a defense lawyer. He's a prosecutor, and he's actually, I mean, endlessly going back and forth to the counsel of God, right? Counsel me, like our counsel, right? Like where the judge sits, and he's constantly going up and saying, "Hey, didn't you see what Trevor did? Didn't you
Yeah.
see what Stephen did?
Yeah.
Look, look." I mean, this brings us all the way back to the book of Job, that he has the
Yeah.
ability to go to and fro from heaven to earth, and to just be circling the earth like a madman, trying to not be the only one that goes into the lake of fire. Right?
Yeah.
He knows his
Oh, that's interesting.
destination is
Yeah.
is in this certain place. It's the second death, right? Known to us, right? And it's this eternal death. And imagine if your destination was fixed. This is where the Tesla is bringing you. You're strapped to the seat, and you have no chance to
Yeah.
to to get it off route. You're gonna try and do all you can to not be the only one
Yep.
that goes there. It's a
Yeah.
psychological thing,
Yeah.
right?
God, that is so interesting. and it really it does explain some things. It's like him being the false accuser. I mean, so much of the Bible, it feels like it feels like a legal case. It's like, okay, so Lucifer. I know Lucifer is not even really used in the Bible, but the enemy, the adversary, he rebelled and fell, and so and part of that has to be an accusation, right? Of like the fairness of his situation, like he should be number one, or something's wrong with the way God created the universe or whatever. And you could kind of, I think, picture humanity as like, okay, let's see, let's create beings in a nice place. The earth is nice, and let's see what they choose. Let's see what they pick. What do they think is fair? completely like unbiased third parties, you know,
Right.
because
Right.
maybe these angelic beings didn't get that choice, you know. It does kind of feel that way. I don't know. I mean, that of course I'm just rambling. It's incoherent, but it is like it is a recurrent theme, and it is interesting, like why the only unforgivable thing is to blaspheme the Holy Spirit. Like that kind of feels like maybe that was the enemy's crime, you
Hmm.
know, and he's not going to be forgiven, and we wouldn't be either.
Which is so
Right.
funny. Christ also says, what is the, unforgivable sin
Right.
is
Yeah.
blasphemy of the Holy Spirit,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's wild, man. And I'm so happy that God came here in the flesh
Yes.
and showed himself and his true power and who he really was to people who accepted him to now get to where we're at today, to get to know him, to understand that when you truly accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, number one, that you are a sinner, right? You have to recognize that, or else really you don't understand the whole story. And that you can't get into heaven on your own will, on your own
Yeah.
terms, on your own
Right.
agreements. You're we have a permanent marker spot on us that we cannot ever get off, right?
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ is that whiteout ink, if that makes any sense. I don't
Yeah.
know,
It does.
but
No, it does.
he's the
Well,
bridge into heaven.
to use the courtroom example again, I mean, it's basically like someone is coming in and taking the penalty for you, you know, and that it feels. I mean, even Judgment Day, like the whole thing feels like it is about that. You know, it's
Well,
about
how about this? How about this, right? Like we're in a courtroom. We're guilty
yeah,
for what we've done. There's so much
right,
evidence, right? There's just a tape roll of just things that we've done in the past, right? Our evidence file is bulging out of the cabinets of sin
uh
and what we've gotten into in this life. And Jesus goes, I got it.
yep, I got you.
I'm gonna take the fall. I'm gonna
Yeah,
say it was me.
yeah,
And that's what him on the cross was, him shedding his blood for us, right? Like getting,
yeah,
taking the lashings and the beating and his body being just beat up for that, right? Like why does the Bible talk about, it's another science thing to get into, like why does it talk about that we have been washed and cleaned by the blood of Jesus? It's like,
yeah,
okay, is iniquity in our genetic buildup? Is it a part of our, you know is it a part of our whole makeup of our being, right? Who
yeah.
knows?
I always constantly am going back and forth on like what's meant to be literal, what's meant to be metaphorical. It
Sure.
is, I guess, and people have spent their entire lives trying to figure this out, but I could totally see that being maybe more literal than metaphorical. I don't know. My wife's texting me because they need to get out of the house in like 5 minutes.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
want to end. Well, I have a question for you for next
Okay.
time. So we, earlier we mentioned this Gnosticism stuff and all this. And, you mentioned God coming in and I love that example because this is something I talk about in the book. People who want to talk about the simulation. I mean, the architect of the simulation, he came into it, you know, to see, that no other religion is like that, because our God knows what it's like, you know, to be us, right? And to suffer. And so no other religion is like that. It's fascinating. But I do think the test that like Christianity is being put to right now is, kind of the same drama that unfolded, early in the Holy Roman Empire with like the Arian controversy is Jesus as God. And I would love to talk to you about that more because that's what I believe. But I think that is like the fundamental schism in Christianity right now.
Like, is
Is
Jesus God?
right. And
Okay, yeah, because you
it,
have different modes or different views of this, right? You've got modalism, you've got the Unitarian view, you've got the Trinitarian view, and then you've just got God is all one. Sorry, there's a bunch of different titles that people can have. I'm not saying they're
yeah.
different uniforms.
Yes.
And it's just
Yes.
different title. It's a description of what it is you're doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I totally agree. And yeah, so and this is obviously just like my theological shortcomings, but I do see that as kind of like a new Christian is maybe like the fundamental challenge to Christianity right now, and maybe it always has been, but, the Trinity concept, and also with Gnosticism, like, the God of the Old Testament being bad and Jesus being distinct, and
Mhm.
all these, is the Old Testament polytheistic? These, I don't agree with any of them. I'm just saying these are, I feel like, the modern challenges, and will continue to be the challenges to Christianity going forward. It's no longer atheism. I
Right.
feel like I feel like atheism is gone. I probably wrote this book for nobody, because there's no atheist out there who's going to read my book and be like, "Oh, God is real," because there's just so few people like that these days. But more and more, I'm having conversations with people about, "Hey, did you listen to, Alex O'Connor talking about,
Oh
the Bible
gosh,
being
yeah.
polytheistic, or did you listen to this conversation about who was really in the garden?" I just think this is like the
Mhm.
next stage
Right.
of
And you know
of
what's
whatever
funny?
this is.
There's a book out there I'm gonna get, and a buddy of mine, Doc Brown, Justin, everyone knows
Yeah.
him who watches my show. He's got the podcast Prometheus Lens, and we were just at an event together, SpiracyCon 25. And shout out to John Pounders, Now You See TV. But the thing is when we were on the way there, right, we had a 4 hour ride there from Tennessee to Kentucky, and we listened to this episode that he had these two scholars on, and they're also pastors, but it was getting to this book called The Angel of the Lord, and which I'm going to get and I'm going to read. But basically, in a short, quick summary of what was talked about, is Jesus Christ is has is God, and he's been the God of the Old Testament, the angel of the Lord, and all these other breakdowns, of ideas, right? To where God has intervened with people. This was Jesus the whole time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that's detrimental to our faith, man. And I think that that is what really gets people saved, is when you actually, in your full heart, believe that Jesus was God,
Yeah.
and you let him into your heart, and it's keep it stupid simple, right? I'm a fireman. Keep it stupid simple, keep it fireman proof, please. You know, just do that, because when Jesus is getting tempted for 40 days in the desert, what did he say to Satan when he was getting tempted? He's like, "Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God." Like, so there's
Yeah.
this, okay. And then he's like,
I agree. Yeah.
I, the Father and I are one. What?
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yes.
So there's these things, and there are
Again, the insurmountable
right.
statements.
Well,
Yes, I
I'll
agree.
leave it with this. There's still some mysteries, because we're trying to teach an ant mathematics here,
Yes.
but there's simple. But the ant can see, if you put your hand in front of it. He's like, okay, don't go that way. Go this way. It's just, there are simple things that the ant can relate to. It's just it can't understand mathematics, if that makes sense. And I
Yeah, it
think the
does.
Bible keeps it really simple, man. But Trevor, thank you so much, brother. This was a lot of fun. I think this is one of the
Thanks,
best
man.
conversations that I have ever had with a podcast, and I'm happy to share it with you, man. So, real quick, for the folks that are still tuning in with us, where they can find your work, and if there's any last message you want to send.
Yeah, please just search God's Eye View on Amazon or Audible to get the book. I'll have a new book out soon. Hopefully, I'll swing by and plug that someday. And also, if anyone out there wants to write a book, my publisher is hemisphericpress.com. It's my buddy David's company. And so check it out.
Right on, man. And real quick, you got a podcast out there. Give it a plug.
Oh, thank you. Bad Press.
All right, bad press, folks, and it looks like a typewriter that with right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So for the people that are
Ironically, an AI generated logo from the guy who talks crap about AI all the time.
right? Oh man, that's funny. Hey, I'm here with you. It's all something that we're guilty of doing, but it's a part of our life. But what's most important is that we have these kind of conversations. We bring people that are outside of the view of the biblical interpretations, or just the biblical narrative, that we simplify it, we kind of break it down also scientifically, kind of like what we got into today. And I'm just my motivation here on this podcast, and what God's molded me into, is just trying to lead and bring people to Christ. And don't be ashamed for what it is you believe in, because it's the truth at the end of the day. And understand that the world is going to constantly come out with new headlines, and read all about it, right? Of things that are trying to discredit what we believe in. So, hey, shout out to you, man. Thank you very much, Trevor. Everyone, if
Thank
you
you.
tune into the show this long, we appreciate you. We love you. If you want to support the show, you want to support Trevor, head on over to the YouTube channels, head on over to the audio sections. hit that subscribe button, hit the follow, 5-star reviews only, folks. And while you're there, hit the notification bells and comment everything that you can. Please, we want to hear about it because this is where we get to dialogue with the audience. But Trevor, again, thank you, brother. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Love you. Gonna see you next time.